What would you do if the person who was supposed to protect you was the one who destroyed you? Not a stranger, not an enemy, not someone who hated you. The one person in this world who should have chosen you no matter what. Stay with me, because this story is going to shake something loose inside of you. And by the time we reach the end, I promise you, you will never look at sacrifice, silence, or survival the same way again. The village of Ndokoye sat like a forgotten prayer between two mountains that no longer spoke to each other. It was the kind of place where everybody knew your name, your grandmother's name, and the exact amount of yam you harvested last season. People smiled at you in the morning and gossiped about you by evening. It was home, which means it was both beautiful and cruel. For 3 years straight, the rains had not come. Let that sit with you for a second. 3 years. Imagine watching the same dry sky every single morning. Imagine cracking your hands open in soil so brittle it turns to powder when you touch it. Imagine watching your children's faces change, not from laughter to sadness, but from hunger to that hollow, distant look that is somehow worse than crying. That was Ndokoye. The river that once ran behind the village, the one the elders called Omidara, beautiful water, had shrunk to a thin, embarrassed trickle. Old women knelt beside it and wept. Young men stared into it and saw nothing staring back. Animals stopped to come to drink. And the people of Ndokoye did what desperate people always do. They started looking for someone to blame. Then they started looking for someone to bargain with. His name was Chukwemeka, but everyone called him Emeka, and he was the kind of man who had always been respected before the drought came. He was not rich, he was not a chief, but he was consistent, a farmer who showed up every day, who helped his neighbors when they needed it, who spoke carefully at village meetings and never raised his voice. He had a wife named Ngozi who laughed too loudly and loved too freely, and she had died 3 seasons ago, not from the drought, but from a fever that came without warning and left without explanation. She had left behind 2 children, a 13-year-old boy named Tobena and a daughter named Adaizi. Adaizi. If you want to understand this story, you have to understand Adaizi first. She was 15 years old and she was everything her father was not. Where Emeka was quiet, Adaizi was loud. Not in an annoying way, but in the way of someone who takes up exactly the space they deserve. She asked questions constantly. She argued with the elders about things girls were told to simply accept. She could identify every plant in the bush by its leaf shape alone, and she used to say that the river spoke to her, that she could hear something in the sound of the water that other people couldn't. Her father used to laugh at that. He used to call her his little spirit girl. He used to. Now, here is the part of this story where most people would look away, but I need you to stay, because this is the part that is real. It was during the 3rd dry season, when the village had eaten through its last stored grain and people were beginning to talk about leaving, that the old diviner came. His name was Okoli. He was ancient the way mountains are ancient, the way things are ancient that have forgotten when they began. He wore white cloth and carried a walking stick carved from a tree that no longer existed in Ndokoye. And when he spoke, people leaned forward automatically without deciding to. He called a meeting of the men. And in that meeting, he said, "The river is waiting. The river is hungry. The river will not give until the village gives first." He spoke of the old ways, the old bargains. He said the spirits of the water had grown tired of offerings of oil and salt and the bones of goats. They wanted something that could not be replaced. They wanted something alive. Now, most of the men shifted uncomfortably. Some coughed, some looked at their shoes. Because people in desperate situations hear what they want to hear, and what Emeka heard, what broke something open in him that night, was an exit, a way out of the drought, a door. He did not make the decision that night, let me be clear about that, because I don't want you to think he was a monster who snapped without a thought. He spent 7 days walking back and forth between his house and the edge of the dry riverbed. He barely ate, he barely slept. He told himself it would be temporary. He told himself she would be safe, that the river spirits were benevolent, that they would care for her the way water cares for everything it touches. He told himself that one life for an entire village was not cruelty, it was mathematics. It was love even. Love stretched so far past breaking that it had become something unrecognizable. And on the 8th night, he went to Okoli and he made the bargain. Let me ask you something right now. And I want you to actually think about this. Don't just scroll past it. Have you ever watched someone you trusted make a decision that revealed a version of them you never knew existed? Have you ever stood in front of someone who loved you, genuinely loved you, and felt that love turn into something that hurt you? Because that's exactly what Adaize experienced the night her father woke her before dawn and told her to come with him to the river. She was not afraid, not at first. She trusted him completely, the way children trust parents, which is one of the most complete and defenseless kinds of trust there is. She put on her wrapper and her sandals and she followed him into the dark. They walked for a long time without speaking. She noticed later that he never held her hand that night, that he walked slightly ahead of her, never turning around, that his voice when he finally spoke had a strange flatness to it, like he was reading words from a page he had memorized so he wouldn't have to feel them. He told her the river needed her. He told her it was an honor. He told her the village would be saved. And then he walked away. She called after him once. Just once. He didn't turn around. 3 days later, it rained. Oh, and how it rained. It came in the middle of the night, a roar that woke every person in Dokoye from sleep and sent them pouring out of their houses into the downpour, arms wide, faces up, laughing and screaming and crying all at once. Children danced in the mud, old men dropped to their knees, women clasped each other and shook. Emeka stood in his doorway and let the rain hit his face. Tobena, his son, ran to find his sister to share the joy. She was not in her bed, she was not anywhere. And this is the moment. Hold on to this. This is the moment that the village decided, without speaking it aloud, without taking a vote, without anyone making an announcement, we will not ask questions. Because asking questions about the miracle would be like looking a gift horse in the mouth. Because if you asked where the rain came from, you might not like what you found. Because sometimes the community's survival depends on everyone agreeing to pretend they don't know what they know. So nobody asked, and the rains continued. And Emeka became, in the eyes of the village, a quiet hero, a man who had done something, though no one said exactly what. He was respected. The elders greeted him by name. His crops recovered. His son grew up strong. And for 7 years, the secret stayed buried. Like things buried often do, pressing upward from the ground. Listen to me very carefully right now, because this is the part of the story that most people miss, and it is the most important part. Trauma doesn't disappear. It goes somewhere. It finds water and learns how to move through it. It sits in the ground of who you are and grows roots. It waits, not patiently, not peacefully, but it waits. And when the season changes, when the flood comes, when the conditions are finally right, it returns. Not quietly, not politely. It returns as a force. 7 years after the night her father left her at the riverbank, the rains came with a violence no one in Ndokoye had ever seen. It wasn't just rain, it was a reckoning. For 4 straight days, the sky emptied itself. The little trickle that Omidara had become swelled into a roaring, muscle-flexing river that spilled over its banks and pushed into the low-lying areas of the village. Houses flooded, roads disappeared, livestock were swept downstream. People climbed onto their rooftops and looked at the water with the particular horror of those who had once begged for something and were now drowning in it. Find the right words. She was not a child anymore. She was 22 years old and she walked the way water walks, with a kind of unstoppable, unhurried certainty. Her clothes were soaked and her hair was loose, and her eyes, they said, looked like someone who had been in a very deep place and had come back changed, but not broken. She was not a ghost. She was not a spirit. She was a woman. And her name was still Adaize. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need you to hear this because it matters more than the drama of what's coming. Adaize had not been swallowed by river spirits. She had survived. After her father left her at the riverbank that night, she had sat in the dark for hours, crying and not crying in turns, going numb and coming back to feeling in turns. She had waited for something supernatural to happen. It didn't. What came instead near morning was a woman, a trader from a village 2 days' walk away, who was moving goods along the old river path before dawn to avoid the heat. The trader, whose name was Mama Ifeniwa, had found a 15-year-old girl alone in the dark by a dry riverbed, trembling and unable to explain how she got there. Mama Ifeniwa had taken her with her. Adaize had spent the following years learning trade, learning survival, learning what it meant to rebuild a self from the rubble of a betrayal. She had not come back because she had nowhere else to go. She had not come back because of weakness. She came back because she was ready. And she came back with something she hadn't had at 15, the quiet, unshakable power of someone who has already survived the worst thing. The reunion with her brother Tobena was wordless at first. He stared at her for a long time. Then he pulled her into an embrace that shook with everything he hadn't been able to say for 7 years. He had known, somehow, in the way younger siblings know things, that what happened was wrong, that the rain had a price, that the price had a face. He had been waiting. Her father heard that she had returned before he saw her. People told him in different ways. Some knocked on his door directly. Some just stood at the entrance to his compound with a look on their faces that said something is happening. And Emeka, older now, grayer, with the posture of a man who has been carrying something heavy for a long time, sat very still in his chair. He did not go to her. She came to him. She walked into his compound in the afternoon when the sun was high and direct and there was nowhere to hide. There were people watching, of course there were. There are always people watching in a village like Ndokoye. But she did not perform for them. She did not shout. She did not cry. She sat down across from her father and she looked at him. And she said simply, "I am here." Emeka's face did something complicated. The thing that happens to people when guilt and love and shame and relief all arrive at the same door. His mouth opened. No words came. "I know what you did, and I know why you did it, and I need you to understand that those two things are not the same as forgiving you." Silence, the kind of silence that entire villages can hear. The village celebrated the rain. Did anyone ask where it came from? Did anyone say my name? Did anyone in 7 years wonder out loud what happened to Emeka's daughter? He could not answer, because the answer was no, and they both knew it. I am not a spirit. I am not a sacrifice. I am not a miracle that happened to your village. I am your daughter, and I came back not for you. I came back so that this village would have to look at what it chose to forget. What happens next is not a fairy tale ending. Real life rarely works that way. The meeting that was called in Ndokoye 2 days later was one of the most uncomfortable gatherings that the community had ever sat through. The elders arrived with the practiced expressions of people who intended to manage the situation. Okole, the old diviner, was long dead by then, which meant the living had to answer for what the dead had set in motion. Adaize spoke in that meeting for a long time. She did not speak with anger, and this more than anything else is what undid people. Anger can be argued with, anger can be dismissed. Calm, clear, specific truth is another thing entirely. She named what happened, not what the village had decided to call it, not a sacrifice or an offering or a gift to the spirits. She named it as what it was: a father who gave his child away because he was afraid, a community that accepted a miracle without asking what it cost, a conspiracy of silence that lasted 7 years because the truth was inconvenient. She was not asking for punishment. She said that clearly. She was asking for acknowledgement. When you celebrate the rain that saved you, I want my name in that story. I want Ndokoye to remember that survival has always had a face. And when you tell this story to your children, and you will, because all villages tell their own stories, tell it true. Tell them what you chose. Tell them what you looked away from, and then tell them that the person you looked away from came back. Tell them she was not broken. Tell them she stood in this square and spoke the truth without flinching. Give them that, not because I need it, but because they deserve to know what real strength looks like. I want to stop here for just a moment because I think this is important. There is a version of this story where Adaize burns everything down, where she comes back with rage and destruction and dismantles everything her father built and leaves Ndokoye in pieces. People might even say that version would be justified. But Adaize chose something harder. She chose to return as a witness, not a destroyer, not a martyr, a witness, someone who says, I was here, this happened, and I will not let it be erased. That takes a different kind of strength than anger. Anger is often easier. Anger gives you something to do with the pain. You can throw it outward, you can use it like a weapon. But to walk back into the place that hurt you and stand in it with your eyes open, without crumbling and without burning it down, to simply insist on being seen, that is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Adaize was 22 years old and she had already learned that. The reunion with her brother Tobena was not what anyone expected. He did not defend himself. He did not speak about the drought or the desperation or the mathematics of sacrifice. He looked at his daughter and he said, quietly so that people in the back had to lean forward, I told myself I was saving the village, but I know now that what I was really doing was saving myself from having to watch them die. I turned my cowardice into something that sounded noble. I dressed it up in the language of sacrifice, and I left my child by a dry riverbed in the dark. He paused. There is no drought bad enough to make that right. People in that square cried, the kind of crying that isn't about sadness, the kind that comes when something true finally gets said that has been unsaid for too long and the body doesn't know how else to receive it. Tobena, sitting beside his sister, put his hand over hers. Adaize did not cry. She nodded. The months that followed were not simple. They never are after truths like this. Some people in Ndokoye felt exposed by what had come to light, not because they had done what Emeka had done, but because they recognized in themselves the capacity for the same kind of silence, the same looking away, the same letting a miracle be a miracle without asking who paid for it. That is an uncomfortable thing to sit with, and people deal with discomfort differently. Some opened up, some became defensive, some avoided Adaize entirely because her presence reminded them of a part of themselves they preferred not to examine. But others, especially the younger women of the village, gathered around her with a kind of quiet, fierce recognition. She started teaching. It started informally, just conversations under the mango trees about plants and remedies and water and trade and survival. It grew. Young girls who had been told that their questions were inappropriate, that their voices were too loud, that their place was small, they found in Adaize permission to be larger. She never said, forget what happened to me. She said, learn from it. She never said, trust no one.
She said, know yourself so well that betrayal cannot define you. She never said, don't love your fathers. She said, love people clearly enough to see them, not just the story you want them to be, but the real, flawed, sometimes failing human they are. And love yourself enough to name it when that human causes you harm. Here is the thing about rivers, if you think about it. A river doesn't stop moving because something wounded it. You can dam a river, you can divert it, you can drain a river down to nothing but mud and stones and memory. But water finds a way. It seeps through cracks, it waits underground, it gathers, and eventually, always eventually, it moves again. Ada-Eze was like that. Not because she was supernatural, not because she was a spirit or a symbol or a metaphor, but because she had decided somewhere in those 7 years of rebuilding herself from nothing that what was done to her was.
But because she had decided, somewhere in those 7 years of rebuilding herself from nothing, that what was done to her was not the final word on who she was. That is not a small decision. Do not underestimate how much courage that takes. There are people who spend their entire lives defined by the worst thing that ever happened to them. Not because they are weak, but because nobody ever showed them that there was another option. Nobody stood in front of them and said, you are allowed to be more than your wound. Ada-Eze had Mama Ifeanyiwa for that. One woman who stopped on a road before dawn and chose not to walk past a suffering child. One person. That is how it often works. One person who pauses. One person who asks the question nobody else asked. One person who says, I see you, at the exact moment when being seen is the difference between survival and disappearing. Who is that person in your life? And more importantly, whose life are you that person in? The rains in Ndokoye came regularly after that, not because of any bargain, not because any spirit had been appeased. They came because that is what rains do. They come and go in cycles, like all things that are alive. The elders who had once spoken about the river's hunger had been wrong about the cause. They had been right, accidentally, about the timing. And like all human beings confronted with coincidence that looks like confirmation, they had built a story around it. But stories can be changed. The story of Ndokoye was changed. Not erased, changed. The version that was told to children from that point forward included Ada-Eze's name. It included the drought and the fear and the bargain. And it included the moment she walked back out of the river and told the truth. It included a father who had failed and then finally, with his daughter watching, had looked at himself clearly. The story did not pretend that Emeka was evil. It did not pretend he was good. It let him be what he was, a man who loved his daughter, who was consumed by fear, who made an unforgivable choice, and who at the end of it was at least honest enough to stop pretending otherwise. That honesty did not undo the harm, but it was something. Ada-Eze and her father never fully recovered the relationship they had lost. How could they? Some things, when broken, leave a different shape behind. Not broken anymore, but not the original shape either. Something new, something that carries the history of the fracture in its form. They sat together sometimes in the evenings, in his compound. They did not always speak. The silence between them was no longer the silence of a man walking ahead of his daughter in the dark. It was something quieter, something that was trying, in its own limited way, to be honest. She did not call him father for a long time. Eventually, she did again, not because she had forgotten, not because she was pretending, but because she had decided that she was large enough to hold both things at once, the love and the wound, the man he had been and the man he was trying to become, the daughter who had been left behind, and the woman who came home on her own terms. That is not a weakness. Let me say that clearly. Choosing to love someone who has hurt you,
Choosing it deliberately with clear eyes without erasing what they did is one of the most difficult and most human things there is. It is not the same as saying what they did was acceptable. It is not the same as giving them permission to do it again. It is simply the decision that your own peace matters more than maintaining the architecture of your hurt. Some people will reach that place. Some people won't. And that is valid too. There is no single correct ending to a story of betrayal. Adiaze's ending was hers. Your ending, if you are carrying something like this, is yours. Before I close this story, I want to say something to you directly. Because maybe you are watching this and something in this story hit a nerve that has nothing to do with a drought or a river or a village. Maybe you have been the Adiaze in your life. Maybe someone who was supposed to protect you chose something else. Maybe they chose their fear or their comfort or their reputation or their survival. Maybe they dressed it up in language that made it sound noble. Maybe the community around you closed ranks and no one said your name out loud. If that is you, hear this. You are not a sacrifice. You are not the price someone else paid for their peace. You are not a footnote in a story about someone else's courage. You are the main character of your own life, and your name belongs in the story. You do not have to come back with fire, but you also do not have to stay silent about what is true. You do not have to forgive on anyone else's timeline, but you also do not have to stay defined by what was done to you. You are allowed to be like the river. You are allowed to recede, to go underground, to rebuild yourself somewhere no one is watching, and then, when you are ready, when the season is right, to come back. Not for them, for yourself. Or maybe you are the Emeka in your life. Maybe you made a choice, not as dramatic, not as clear-cut, but in the same family of choices where fear spoke louder than love, where survival instinct overrode your better nature, where you looked at someone who needed you and chose yourself instead, and then told yourself a story about why that was okay. If that is you, this story is also for you. It is not too late to stop walking ahead. It is not too late to turn around. You cannot undo what happened. Emeka could not unleave his daughter by that riverbed, but he could, and eventually did, stop adding silence to the wound. He could look at her clearly. He could say the true thing even in public, even when it cost him something. That is available to you too. The people we've hurt are often still out there. They are often still carrying it. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes the simplest, most radical thing we can do is turn around and say, I see what I did. I am not going to pretend anymore. That is not enough on its own, but it is a beginning. And some things can only begin with the truth. The river Omidara still runs behind the village of Ndokoye. In the wet season, it is wide and muscular and full of sound. Children play at its edges. Women wash clothes on its stones. Old men sit nearby in the shade and talk about things that have happened and things that are yet to come. And sometimes the people of Ndokoye say, when a young girl pauses at the riverbank and stands there listening, the way some children do, tilting her head slightly like she can hear something in the water, they say she looks like Adiaze. They say it as a compliment now. They mean she is not afraid of what the water knows. They mean she is listening for the true thing. They mean she will not look away. This story is not just a story. It is a mirror. It asks you to look at the places in your own life where you have been asked to stay silent about something true. It asks you to look at the people you may have failed, the kindnesses you withheld, the names you didn't say out loud when you should have. It asks you to look at how communities, families, friend groups, workplaces, entire villages can collectively agree to not know what they know, because knowing it would require them to do something difficult. And it asks you to consider what becomes possible when someone refuses to let the silence stand. Not out of revenge, out of love for the truth, out of respect for their own story, out of the belief, quiet, unshakable, earned through surviving impossible things, that they are worth being seen. You are worth being seen. Every single part of your story, the chapters you are proud of and the ones you are ashamed of, the moment you stood tall and the moment you failed, the times you were Adiaze and the times, if you are honest, you were Emeka. All of it is worth being held in the full light. That is not a weakness. That is the bravest thing in the world. If this story reached you, if something in it touched a part of your life, reminded you of someone, or made you see yourself differently, please take a moment right now. Leave a comment below. Tell us which character you saw yourself in. Tell us what you are carrying. Tell us what question this story left you with. We read every single comment, and you would be surprised how many people scroll through those comments and find exactly what they needed to hear from a stranger who felt the same way they did. And if you believe this story deserves to be told, if you think someone in your life needs to hear it, share it. Not because we need the numbers, but because the person you share it with might be sitting somewhere right now, feeling like Adiaze felt by that riverbank, alone in the dark, waiting for someone to come. Be that person. Share it. Subscribe to this channel, because every story we tell here is built the same way this one was built. From truth, from humanity, from the belief that the most powerful thing we can do for each other is refuse to look away. We will see you in the next story. Until then, turn around. Someone is calling your name.